Okay, picture this. You've got one person absolutely screaming at the TV. Their whole week is completely ruined by a single missed field goal. And then you've got someone else sitting right next to them, just calmly reading a book, totally unfazed. So, what's really going on here? Well, let's dive into the fascinating science behind it, because it turns out it's not just about personal preference. So, first things first, let's just look at the numbers to see the scale of this. Here in the US, about 60% of people call themselves sports fans. But that leaves a massive 40% of the population who, if you ask them, hey, did you see the game last night, genuinely could not care less. Right, so what is going on inside the brains of that 40%? It's not just a simple matter of taste. We're actually talking about real physical differences in brain chemistry. Yeah, and let me be super clear about this. This isn't about some people having passion and others not. It's about neuroscience. Their brains might actually be wired differently, from their hormones all the way down to their reward circuits. Okay, first up, let's talk about one of the most powerful forces in all of human history, tribalism. We're talking about an ancient instinct that sports, well, they tap into it with incredible efficiency. I mean, think about it. For literally thousands of years, being part of a tribe meant survival. It protected you, it fed you, it gave you a real identity. Sports teams are basically just our modern tribes. The only difference is they have much better merchandise and, a whole lot more statistics. So just look at how this breaks down. When a fan watches their team, their brain releases oxytocin. That's the bonding hormone. It's the same chemical that creates deep family bonds. So their brain is literally seeing the team as their clan. Now for non-fans, whole different story. They tend to have lower tribal instincts, a more individualistic mindset, and way less of that intense us versus them thinking. All right. Next, we got to talk about the brain's reward system and a powerful little chemical you've probably heard of called dopamine, because this is where it gets really fascinating. So, have you ever wondered why watching a game is just so compelling for some people? Well, it's all about uncertainty. You just don't know who's going to win, and that sense of anticipation fires up your dopamine circuits. It's this thing called intermittent reinforcement, which, by the way, is the exact same principle that makes slot machines so addictive. The brain gets hooked on those unpredictable little rewards and just starts craving more and more. And look, this isn't just some theory we're throwing around. fMRI scans actually show that watching your team play lights up the exact same reward centers in the brain as gambling does. To your brain, it's all about getting that sweet, sweet dopamine hit. Okay, so what happens if you're someone who just doesn't get that dopamine rush? Well, get this. Research now suggests it might actually be in your DNA. Tiny variations in our dopamine receptor genes can help predict how much we care about sports. That's right, your total indifference could literally be hardwired right into your genetic code. Okay, so we've got tribalism, we've got dopamine. Now let's get a little more personal and talk about self-esteem and how it can get all tangled up in the wins and losses of a team you don't even play for. There's actually a scientific term for this. It's called basking in reflected glory, or burging for short. It's that feeling when you get a personal sense of achievement, a real boost to your self-worth, just because a group you identify with happens to succeed. And here is the absolute classic example. Just listen for it next time a fan is talking about a game. When the team wins, it's always, "we won." But when they lose, all of a sudden it's, "they lost." That tiny little switch in pronouns, it reveals a really powerful psychological defense mechanism at play. So when you boil it all down, it looks like this. A fan's self-esteem can be this total roller coaster, going up and down with the performance of athletes they will probably never even meet. A non-fan, on the other hand, tends to have a much more stable self-concept because their sense of success is coming from inside themselves. All right, this next idea is, I think, super fascinating. I want you to think of your ability to care deeply about something as a finite resource. Let's call it an empathy budget. We all have one, and we all have to decide, consciously or not, how we're going to spend it. Now, for a really dedicated fan, a big chunk of that empathy budget is going straight to their team. They invest real, genuine emotional energy in the struggles and the triumphs of strangers who just happen to be wearing the right color jersey. But for a non-fan, that exact same empathy budget gets spent totally differently. And it's probably not a coincidence that people who aren't into sports often score way higher on things like being open to new experiences or having a deep appreciation for art and beauty. They're just channeling that same emotional energy into things like social causes, creative projects, or intellectual puzzles. And all of this kind of brings us to our final big idea, this deep human need for story and for meaning, and the two very different ways that people go about finding it. So, on the one hand, you have what psychologists call parasocial investment. You can basically think of it as a one-sided relationship with a team or a player. You put in a lot of emotional energy, but it's not a two-way street. On the other hand, non-fans seem to prefer direct engagement, investing their energy in relationships and activities where there's a real give and take, where they are an active participant, not just a spectator in their own story. So if they're not getting it from sports, where do non-fans find those big epic narratives? Well, pretty much everywhere else. In a brilliant novel, in a major scientific breakthrough, in their own creative work, in their deep personal relationships, or in fighting for a cause they truly believe in. See, they're still searching for that exact same sense of meaning and transcendence. They're just tuned to a different channel. And look, the really crucial thing to get here is that one way isn't better than the other. Not at all. These are just two completely different, totally valid strategies for navigating the complexities of what it means to be human and our shared need for story and for connection. So at the end of the day, whether you're that die-hard fan screaming at the TV or the person who really couldn't care less, it's a question worth asking yourself. In the grand story of your own life, where are you investing your passion? What game are you playing?